Welcome. Thanks for joining us here tonight at the Z-Files to celebrate 15,000 years of canine-human co-evolution while settling you into a restful state. In our ease-paced commentary, we will learn how wolves transformed into our most loyal companions, delve into archaeological discoveries and genetic insights, and follow the shared journey of devotion and survival that forged an unbreakable bond. Part 1. First footprints in the snow. Picture a winter evening 15,000 years ago. The air is sharp and still. Snow blankets the ground in unbroken white, stretching toward distant hills where the last light fades. Somewhere near the edge of a forest, a small fire flickers. Human hands feed it with dry wood. The flames rise and fall, casting warm shadows across weathered faces. And there, just beyond the circle of light, a pair of amber eyes watches. They belong to a creature caught between two worlds, neither fully wolf nor the companion we would recognize now. Yet in that moment, something profound is already underway. A bond is forming that will reshape both species for millennia to come. This is where our story begins, though the true beginning stretches back even further into uncertainty and ice. The domestication of dogs represents the oldest partnership between humans and any animal. Long before we cultivated wheat or tamed horses, we walked alongside canines. Long before cities rose or written language emerged, we shared our fires and our fortunes with them. The relationship is so ancient that tracing its origins requires piecing together fragments of bone, snippets of genetic code, and the patient work of scientists across continents. What they have found is remarkable. Dogs did not simply become our servants or our tools. They became something closer, something woven into the fabric of human life itself. The evidence comes from many sources, but some of the most compelling arrives from the ground. Archaeologists working in Europe, Asia, and the Middle East have unearthed skeletal remains that tell quiet stories. A burial site in Germany, dated to roughly 14,000 years ago, contains the bones of a dog alongside those of a man and woman. The arrangement suggests care, intention, perhaps even grief. The dog was not discarded. It was honored. Similar findings appear across Eurasia, each one a small window into a world where humans and dogs had already begun to see one another as kin. Genetic research has added layers to this picture. Scientists at institutions like the Max Planck Institute for Evolutionary Anthropology have sequenced DNA from ancient dog remains and compared it to the genomes of modern dogs and wolves. The findings are intricate, sometimes contradictory, but a broad consensus has emerged. Dogs likely descended from a now extinct population of grey wolves. The split occurred somewhere between 15,000 and 40,000 years ago, though pinpointing the exact moment remains difficult. What is clearer is that once the divergence began, it accelerated. Wolves who ventured closer to human camps, who tolerated our presence and scavenged our leftovers, gained advantages. They found food more reliably. They faced fewer threats. Over generations, natural selection favored traits that made these animals more compatible with human life. Reduced aggression, increased sociability, a willingness to look to us for cues. But this was not a one-sided transformation. Humans changed too. We learned to read the signals these protodogs offered, to distinguish between the cautious scavenger and the bold threat. We discovered that certain individuals among them could be trusted, that they might even be useful. They could alert us to danger, help us track game, keep watch through the long nights. Slowly, imperceptibly at first, we began to shape one another. This is the essence of co-evolution, a process in which two species influence each other's development. The relationship was reciprocal, mutual, a quiet negotiation written in behavior and biology. Consider the eyes. Modern dogs have evolved a facial musculature that wolves lack, allowing them to raise their inner eyebrows and create expressions that humans find deeply endearing. This is not coincidence or accident. It is the result of thousands of years during which dogs who could communicate more effectively with us, who could tug at our emotions, were more likely to be cared for and to reproduce. We selected for companionship, often without realizing it, and the dogs responded by becoming ever more attuned to our moods, our gestures, our needs. The chemistry of the bond runs deeper still. Research has shown that when humans and dogs gaze into one another's eyes, both experience a surge of oxytocin, the same hormone involved in maternal bonding and trust between people. This is extraordinary. It suggests that the mechanisms evolution designed to bind parents to children have been co-opted, repurposed to cement a connection across species. When you look at your dog and feel warmth, affection, a sense of being understood, you are experiencing something rooted in ancient biology. The bond is not metaphorical. It is measurable, physiological, real. Yet for all the science, there is something about the relationship that resists easy explanation. Dogs have followed us through every chapter of human history. They have accompanied us across continents, through wars and migrations, into the smallest villages and the largest cities. They have adapted to climates and cultures wildly different from the Ice Age landscapes where the partnership began. Some have become hunters, others herders, still others companions whose only job is to sit beside us and share our lives. The diversity of modern dog breeds reflects the diversity of human needs and desires, but beneath that variety lies a single, enduring truth. Dogs chose us, and we chose them. The choice was made so long ago that we can scarcely imagine a world without it. As we move forward through this story, we will explore how that choice unfolded. We will walk through ancient campsites and examine the clues left in soil and stone. We will delve into the genetics that reveal hidden histories and the behaviors that bridge the gap between species. We will consider what it means that this relationship, forged in firelight and snow, has endured for 15,000 years and shows no sign of ending. But for now, let us simply rest with the image of that first tentative approach, the moment when wolf and human recognized in one another not a threat, but a possibility. The fire burns low. The amber eyes draw closer. And somewhere in the darkness, the future begins to take shape. Part 2. Bones and Belonging. The archaeological record, for all its gaps and silences, speaks clearly on one point. Wherever humans settled, dogs were not far behind. Or perhaps it is more accurate to say that they were right there alongside, participants rather than followers. The oldest confirmed dog remains come from sites scattered across Europe and Asia, each discovery pushing back the timeline or filling in missing pieces. In Siberia, a fragment of skull dated to more than 33,000 years ago shows features intermediate between wolf and dog, suggesting that the transformation was already underway during the depths of the last ice age. In the Levant, researchers have uncovered burial sites where dogs rest beside their human companions, the positioning so deliberate it can only indicate affection, respect, or both. One of the most evocative finds comes from Bonnober Castle in Germany. There, in a grave approximately 14,000 years old, lie the skeletons of a man, a woman, and a dog. The dog was young, probably less than a year old, and analysis of its teeth revealed signs of disease. It had suffered from distemper, a viral infection that would have left it weak and incapable of contributing to hunting or guarding. Yet it was cared for. It survived long enough to recover, at least partially, before it died and was buried with ceremony. This is not the treatment one affords a tool or a resource. This is the care given to a member of the family. Such findings are not isolated. Across Eurasia, dogs appear in human graves with surprising frequency. Sometimes they are placed at the feet of the deceased, sometimes curled as if sleeping, sometimes accompanied by grave goods that mirror those given to people. The pattern suggests that by the time these burials occurred, dogs had already crossed a threshold. They were no longer seen as animals in the way we might view deer or rabbits. They had become something else, something closer to us in status and significance. Genetic evidence reinforces this picture and adds nuance. By examining DNA from ancient dog remains, scientists can trace lineages and migrations, mapping the spread of dogs alongside the spread of humanity. The data reveal multiple domestication events, or at least complex interbreeding between early dog populations and regional wolf groups. It is probable that dogs were not domesticated once in a single location, but rather emerged in several places as human and wolf populations overlapped and interacted. Over time, these separate lines mingled, giving rise to the genetically diverse populations we see in modern dogs. This diversity is itself a testament to the depth of the relationship. As humans moved, they took their dogs with them. When groups split and traveled in different directions, their canine companions split too, adapting to new environments and roles. In the Arctic, dogs became integral to survival, pulling sleds and providing warmth. In the deserts of the Middle East, they guarded flocks and warned of predators. In the forests of Europe and Asia, they assisted in hunting, their keen senses and speed making them invaluable partners in the pursuit of game. Each adaptation required changes in behavior, physiology, sometimes even size and shape. The result is a species more varied in appearance than any other mammal, yet unified by a single underlying relationship with us. The bond was not merely practical. Evidence suggests that even in ancient times, dogs occupied emotional space in human lives. Consider the care given to the sick puppy at Bonobo Castle. Consider the grief implied by burials where dogs and humans lie together. These are not the actions of people who view their animals as expendable. They are the actions of people who have formed attachments, who have come to rely not just on the utility of dogs but on their presence, their companionship, their loyalty. Modern research into the emotional lives of dogs lends credence to this interpretation. Studies have shown that dogs are capable of recognizing human emotions, responding to our facial expressions and vocal tones with remarkable accuracy. They can distinguish between a happy voice and an angry one, between a welcoming gesture and a threatening posture. They can even sense when we are stressed or unwell, often altering their behavior to provide comfort. This sensitivity is not accidental. It is the product of thousands of generations during which dogs learn to read us, to anticipate our needs, to fit themselves into the rhythms of our lives. The oxytocin connection, mentioned earlier, plays a central role here. When you pet a dog, both of you experience a rise in this hormone. When you engage in play, the effect is even stronger. The feedback loop reinforces the bond, making each interaction more rewarding and more likely to be repeated. Over time, this creates a relationship that feels instinctive, natural, as if it had always been meant to be. And in a sense, perhaps it was. The evolutionary pressures that brought humans and dogs together were powerful and persistent, shaping both species in ways that made the partnership not just possible but almost inevitable. Yet the story is not without its shadows. While most human cultures have come to treasure dogs as companions and helpers, not all have extended that recognition equally. In some parts of the world, including regions of China, Vietnam, Indonesia, and the Philippines, dogs are still consumed as food. Annual festivals in certain areas even celebrate this practice, treating dogs not as the devoted companions they have proven themselves to be, but as livestock. This stands in stark contrast to the 15,000-year history of mutual devotion we have been tracing. It represents a failure to honor the bond, a refusal to see in dogs what so many other cultures have seen: a partner, a friend, a being deserving of respect and care. The contrast is sharpest when we consider how deeply dogs have become embedded in the lives of those who do recognize their worth. In many countries, dogs are now legally regarded as family members. Courts have begun to award custody in divorce cases. Laws protect them from cruelty with increasing rigor. When a beloved dog dies, the grief experienced by their humans is profound and real. Counseling services have emerged to help people navigate the loss, acknowledging that the death of a dog is not a trivial event but a significant rupture in the fabric of daily life. This is the depth of the connection, a bond so strong that its breaking leaves a wound. As the ancient firelight fades and we step closer to the present, the story continues to unfold. The bones in the ground whisper of beginnings, but they also point forward, toward a future in which the relationship between human and dog grows ever more intricate and intertwined. Part 3. The language of eyes and ears. Communication between species is a delicate matter. Most animals that share our world remain fundamentally separate. Their signals and intentions opaque to us, ours to them. We may observe them, study them, even predict their behavior, but true mutual understanding is rare. Dogs are different. They have developed an ability to read human communication that borders on the uncanny. They watch our faces, interpret our gestures, follow our gaze with an attentiveness that exceeds even that of our closest primate relatives. This is not simply learned behavior, though learning plays a role. It is something deeper, encoded in the very nature of what dogs have become through their long association with us. Researchers have conducted numerous experiments to test the limits of canine comprehension. In one classic study, dogs and wolves were both presented with a puzzle: food hidden in one of two containers, with a human experimenter pointing toward the correct choice. The dogs, even very young puppies with minimal human contact, followed the pointing gesture and found the food. The wolves, despite being raised by humans from birth, failed. They did not understand the signal. They did not look to the human for guidance. This difference is striking. It suggests that somewhere in the transition from wolf to dog, the capacity for this kind of social cognition was fundamentally altered. The explanation lies partly in selection. Dogs who could read human cues were more successful. They received more food, more care, more opportunities to reproduce. Over countless generations, this selection pressure shaped the canine brain, enhancing areas associated with social attention and emotional processing. Brain imaging studies have revealed that when dogs hear human voices, especially the voices of their owners, regions associated with reward and emotional bonding light up. They are neurologically wired to care about us, to pay attention to us, to find meaning in our presence. But the communication flows in both directions. Humans have also become remarkably skilled at reading dogs. We can distinguish between different types of barks, recognizing the difference between an alert bark, a playful bark, and a bark of distress. We respond to tail position, ear orientation, the subtle shifts in posture that signal relaxation or tension. Most dog owners can tell at a glance whether their companion is happy, anxious, excited, or unwell. This mutual intelligibility is rare in the animal kingdom. It is the product of shared history, of 15,000 years during which both species learned to speak a common emotional language. Consider the tail wag, that most iconic of dog behaviors. It seems simple, a sign of happiness, but the reality is more nuanced. Dogs wag their tails more to the right when they see something positive, like their owner, and more to the left when they see something negative or unfamiliar. Other dogs can perceive this asymmetry and respond accordingly, becoming more relaxed or more cautious based on the direction of the wag. Humans, though less consciously aware of the distinction, often pick up on these signals at a subconscious level, adjusting our approach without quite knowing why. The eyes, too, tell stories. When a dog gazes at its owner, the look is soft, steady, a direct form of connection that few other animals offer. Wolves avoid prolonged eye contact with humans. In wolf society, a direct stare is a challenge, a threat. Dogs have learned to invert this meaning. For them, the gaze is an invitation, a request, a gesture of trust. And when we meet that gaze, when we look back and feel the warmth of recognition, the oxytocin flows in both of us, binding us more tightly together. This capacity for connection has made dogs invaluable in roles beyond companionship. Service dogs assist people with disabilities, performing tasks that require not just training but intuition. They can sense when a person with epilepsy is about to have a seizure, sometimes minutes before any outward signs appear. They can detect changes in blood sugar levels in diabetics, alerting their owners in time to prevent medical crisis. Therapy dogs provide comfort in hospitals, schools, and disaster zones, their presence alone enough to lower blood pressure and reduce anxiety. These are not tricks or mechanical responses. They are expressions of the deep attunement dogs have to human states of being. Yet even in everyday life, away from the specialized roles, the language between dogs and humans persists in small, constant exchanges. A dog waiting by the door, ears perked, body tense with anticipation, knows that the jingle of keys means a walk is coming. A dog curled on the couch, one eye open, tracks the movements of its owner through the room, ready to rise if needed but content to rest if not. These are conversations without words, dialogues conducted in glance and gesture, in the quiet choreography of shared space. There is something profoundly calming in this kind of communication. It requires no explanation, no translation. It simply is. In a world where human interactions can be fraught with misunderstanding and complexity, the clarity of a dog's signals offers a kind of relief. They are present. They are honest. They ask for little beyond food, safety, and the chance to be near us. In return, they offer a loyalty and an acceptance that is difficult to find elsewhere. As we consider this exchange, this language built over millennia, we begin to see that the relationship between human and dog is not merely historical or biological. It is also linguistic, a form of dialogue that predates and transcends the words we use with one another. It is a reminder that connection can exist in many forms, that understanding does not always require speech, and that sometimes the most profound communications are the ones that pass in silence, through a look, a touch, a shared moment of stillness. The dog at your feet shifts position, sighs, settles back into sleep. The room is quiet. The bond, invisible but undeniable, holds. Part 4. across continents and centuries. The spread of dogs across the world mirrors the spread of humanity itself. As our ancestors left Africa and fanned out across continents, dogs came with them or met them along the way, adapting to each new landscape and climate with remarkable flexibility. By the time humans reached the farthest corners of the Earth, from the frozen Arctic to the sweltering tropics, dogs were already there or soon followed. This global distribution is one of the clearest testaments to the success of the partnership. No other domesticated animal achieved such ubiquity so early in human history. Archaeological evidence traces these journeys in fragments. Dog remains have been found in ancient sites across Europe, Asia, Africa, and the Americas. In some cases, the timing of their arrival coincides closely with the arrival of humans, suggesting that the two species traveled together. In other cases, dogs appear to have been introduced later, perhaps through trade or migration. What is consistent is that once dogs established themselves in a region, they stayed. They became integral to the cultures and economies of the people who lived there. In the Arctic, where survival demanded innovation and resilience, dogs became indispensable. The ancestors of modern sled dogs pulled heavy loads across ice and snow, enabling human communities to hunt, trade, and migrate over vast distances. Without dogs, the colonization of the Arctic would have been far more difficult, perhaps impossible. The dogs themselves evolved to thrive in the cold, developing thick coats, efficient metabolisms, and a tolerance for the long, dark winters. They were not merely tools but partners in endurance, sharing the hardships and the triumphs of life at the edge of the habitable world. In warmer climates, dogs took on different roles. In the grasslands and deserts of Central Asia and the Middle East, they guarded livestock, protecting flocks from wolves and other predators. In the forests of Europe and North America, they assisted in hunting, using their speed and stamina to chase down game that humans alone could not catch. Each environment demanded different traits, and over time, distinct populations emerged, shaped by the specific needs of the humans they lived among. The herding dogs of the steppes were lean and alert, bred for endurance and vigilance. The hunting dogs of the forests were strong and tireless, capable of covering great distances in pursuit of prey. But beyond these practical roles, dogs also occupied cultural and spiritual space. Many indigenous cultures around the world developed myths and stories that featured dogs as guides, protectors, or even ancestors. In some Native American traditions, dogs were believed to lead the souls of the dead to the afterlife, a role that speaks to the depth of trust and reverence they inspired. In ancient Egypt, the god Anubis, depicted with the head of a jackal or dog, presided over mummification and the journey to the underworld. Dogs were not merely earthly companions but beings with significance that extended into the sacred and the eternal. The genetic record adds another layer to this story. By analyzing DNA from dogs around the world, scientists have identified distinct lineages that correspond to geographic regions and historical migrations. Some lineages trace back to ancient populations in East Asia, others to the Middle East or Europe. These genetic markers reveal patterns of movement and mixing, showing how dogs followed trade routes, accompanied explorers, and spread through conquest and colonization. The story is complex, a web of connections that mirrors the complexity of human history itself. One particularly fascinating finding involves the dogs of the Americas. For many years, scientists believed that all modern dogs in North and South America descended from animals brought by European colonizers in the 15th and 16th centuries. Recent genetic studies have complicated this picture. It now appears that dogs arrived in the Americas much earlier, probably crossing the Bering Land Bridge with the first human inhabitants more than 10,000 years ago. These ancient lineages have largely disappeared, replaced, or absorbed by later arrivals, but traces remain in the DNA of some indigenous breeds. The discovery underscores how deeply intertwined the histories of humans and dogs truly are. We did not arrive anywhere alone. We brought our companions, and they helped shape the new worlds we entered. As human societies grew more complex, so did the roles dogs played within them. In ancient Rome, dogs guarded homes and accompanied soldiers. In medieval Europe, they hunted alongside nobility and worked on farms. In China, small companion breeds were developed for the imperial courts, dogs bred not for labor but for beauty and affection. The diversity of breeds we see today is a relatively recent phenomenon, most of it arising in the last few hundred years as selective breeding became more systematic. But the underlying impulse is ancient. Humans have always shaped dogs to fit their needs, and dogs have always responded, proving adaptable beyond measure. Yet through all this variation, through all the different climates and cultures and centuries, one thing remained constant. Dogs stayed close. They remained attuned to us, loyal to us, willing to adjust their lives to fit ours. Whether pulling sleds in Siberia or lounging in palaces in Beijing, whether hunting in the forests or guarding flocks on the plains, they maintained the bond that first formed in firelight and snow. The relationship survived because it was flexible, because it met needs on both sides, because it was, at its core, a relationship of mutual benefit and mutual affection. As we move forward through history, we will see that bond tested and transformed by the modern world. Industrialization, urbanization, and changing human lifestyles have all reshaped what it means to live with dogs. But before we reach that threshold, let us pause and appreciate the scope of what has already been achieved. 15,000 years of partnership. Hundreds of cultures, each finding its own way to include dogs in the fabric of daily life. Millions of individual relationships, each one a small echo of that first tentative meeting between human and wolf. The fire has spread across the world. The amber eyes watch from every continent. And still, the bond endures. Part 5. The Science of Devotion. There is a moment many dog owners recognize, a moment that seems to transcend the ordinary rhythms of daily life. You return home after hours away, and your dog greets you with an intensity that feels almost ceremonial. The tail wags so hard the entire body curves. The eyes shine. Small sounds escape, neither bark nor whine but something in between, a vocal expression of pure recognition and relief. In that moment, you are not simply a provider of food or shelter. You are the center of that dog's world, the anchor point around which everything else revolves. This devotion, so freely given, has puzzled and moved humans for as long as the relationship has existed. Only recently has science begun to explain what lies beneath it. The neurochemistry of the bond, as we have touched upon, involves oxytocin. But the story is richer than a single hormone can tell. When dogs and humans interact, multiple systems activate in both brains. Studies using functional MRI scanners have allowed researchers to observe what happens inside a dog's brain when it sees its owner's face or hears its owner's voice. The caudate nucleus, a region associated with reward and positive expectation, shows increased activity. This is the same area that lights up in human brains when we anticipate something pleasurable, when we see someone we love, when we experience joy. The parallel is not metaphorical. It is structural, a shared neural architecture that makes the emotional experience of bonding similar across species. Dogs also possess a version of the hormone vasopressin, which plays a role in social bonding and attachment. Variations in the genes that regulate these hormones have been linked to differences in dog behavior, particularly in how sociable and affectionate individual dogs are toward humans. Some dogs are naturally more inclined to seek human contact, to maintain proximity, to offer comfort. Others are more independent. These differences are partly genetic, shaped by the same forces of selection that created dogs in the first place. Over millennia, humans consistently chose to keep and breed dogs that were friendly, that sought closeness, that displayed what we interpret as love. The result is a species whose default orientation is toward us. But devotion is not purely chemical or genetic. It is also learned, reinforced through experience and relationship. Puppies go through critical periods of socialization during which their brains are especially receptive to forming attachments. Exposure to humans during these windows, particularly between 3 and 14 weeks of age, shapes how they will relate to people for the rest of their lives. A puppy raised with positive human contact learns that humans are safe, that they are sources of food and warmth and play. These early lessons become deeply embedded, forming the foundation for lifelong loyalty. The concept of attachment, borrowed from psychology, applies remarkably well to dogs. In studies modeled on experiments originally designed for human infants, researchers have demonstrated that dogs form secure attachments to their owners. When placed in an unfamiliar environment, a dog will explore more confidently if its owner is present. If the owner leaves, the dog shows signs of distress. When the owner returns, the dog seeks proximity and comfort. This pattern mirrors the attachment behavior seen in young children with their parents. It suggests that dogs do not merely tolerate our presence or appreciate the resources we provide. They form genuine emotional bonds, relationships characterized by trust and dependence. This attachment can be so strong that separation causes measurable stress. Dogs left alone for extended periods often exhibit anxiety, pacing, whining, sometimes engaging in destructive behavior not out of spite but out of distress. Their cortisol levels rise, indicating activation of the stress response. For some dogs, the anxiety is severe enough to require intervention, whether through training, environmental changes, or medication. The phenomenon speaks to the depth of the bond. Dogs are not solitary creatures content to wait passively for our return. They are social beings who have come to need us, emotionally and psychologically, in ways that go beyond the physical necessities of survival. The devotion extends to remarkable acts of loyalty documented throughout history and into the present. Stories abound of dogs who waited for deceased owners, who traveled great distances to return home, who refused to leave the side of injured or ill companions. One of the most famous examples is Hachiko, an Akita in Japan who met his owner at the train station every day. When the owner died suddenly at work, Hachiko continued to wait at the station every afternoon for nearly 10 years, until his own death. The story became a cultural touchstone, a symbol of loyalty that transcends reason or self-interest. Such stories are not anomalies. They reflect something fundamental about what dogs are and what they have become through their association with us. The capacity for loyalty, for devotion that persists even in the absence of reward, is part of the legacy of domestication. It is one of the traits we selected for, often unconsciously, every time we chose to care for the dog that stayed close, that looked to us for guidance, that seemed to understand what we needed before we asked. Yet devotion is not only a canine trait. Humans reciprocate, often with an intensity that surprises us. The grief experienced when a dog dies is real and profound. It is not uncommon for people to describe the loss as comparable to losing a family member, because that is precisely what the dog has been. Counseling services and support groups exist to help people navigate this grief, acknowledging that the pain is legitimate and worthy of care. In many jurisdictions, laws are evolving to reflect the changing status of dogs. They are increasingly recognized not as property but as beings with intrinsic value, entitled to protection and consideration. Some countries have taken this recognition further than others. In France, a 2015 law reclassified animals, including dogs, as sentient beings rather than movable goods. Similar legal shifts have occurred in New Zealand, Quebec, and other regions. These changes reflect a growing understanding that the relationship between humans and dogs is not one of ownership in the traditional sense, but something closer to guardianship, a responsibility to care for beings who depend on us and who give us so much in return. The contrast with regions where dogs are still consumed as food becomes even starker in this context. In parts of China, Vietnam, Indonesia, and the Philippines, dogs are stolen, snatched from the streets or raised and slaughtered for meat, sometimes under conditions of significant cruelty. Annual festivals in some areas celebrate this practice, treating dogs as commodities rather than companions. This represents a profound disconnect from the 15,000-year history of partnership and mutual devotion. It is a failure to see in dogs what they have proven themselves to be across cultures and centuries: loyal, affectionate beings capable of forming deep bonds with humans and of providing significant service to society. The disparity highlights how cultural practices can diverge sharply, even in relation to a species that has been so universally intertwined with human life. As we sit with these questions of devotion and recognition, of love and loss, we are reminded that the bond between human and dog is not static. It evolves, shaped by science and culture, by law and custom, by the choices we make about how to treat the beings who have chosen to live alongside us. The chemistry of oxytocin, the neural pathways of attachment, the legal definitions of sentience, all these are threads in a larger tapestry, one that began in the Ice Age and continues to unfold in the present. The dog resting nearby shifts in sleep, perhaps dreaming of you. The devotion is mutual, quiet, profound. It asks for nothing but presence. And in that asking, it gives everything. Part 6. Hunters, Herders, and Helpers. The practical contributions of dogs to human survival and prosperity are difficult to overstate. For most of the 15,000 years since domestication began, dogs worked. They were not ornamental. They were not leisure companions in the modern sense. They performed tasks that shaped economies, enabled migrations, and determined whether communities thrived or struggled. The roles varied by region and culture, but everywhere dogs settled, they made themselves essential. Hunting was perhaps the earliest and most widespread partnership. A human hunter armed with a spear or bow possesses certain advantages: intelligence, planning, the ability to craft tools. But the prey has advantages too, particularly speed and acute senses. A deer can outrun a human easily. An injured animal can disappear into dense brush where a person cannot follow. Dogs changed this equation. With their superior sense of smell, they could track prey across great distances, even when the trail seemed cold to human senses. With their speed, they could chase down animals that would otherwise escape. With their stamina, they could pursue quarry until it tired, making the final kill easier and safer for the human hunters. Different hunting strategies called for different kinds of dogs. Sighthounds, lean and fast, pursued prey by vision across open terrain. Scent hounds, sturdy and tireless, tracked by smell through forests and marshes. Some dogs were bred to flush birds from hiding, others to retrieve downed game from water. The diversity of hunting breeds reflects the diversity of human hunting practices, each one a specialized solution to a particular challenge. But beneath the specialization, the fundamental dynamic remained the same. Humans and dogs worked together, combining strengths, compensating for weaknesses, achieving more as a team than either could alone. As humans transitioned from hunting and gathering to agriculture and pastoralism, the role of dogs shifted as well. Herding became crucial in societies that depended on sheep, goats, cattle, or reindeer. Keeping large animals together, moving them to fresh pasture, protecting them from predators, these were labor-intensive tasks that dogs performed with a skill that bordered on artistry. Herding dogs learned to control the movement of livestock using body language, strategic positioning, sometimes a bark or nip to guide a wayward animal back to the group. The best herding dogs seemed to anticipate the needs of both the flock and the shepherd, acting with a kind of intelligence that looked remarkably like understanding. The relationship between herding dogs and their human partners was particularly close. A shepherd might spend months alone with a flock and a few dogs, isolated in high pastures or remote ranges. In such circumstances, the dogs were not merely tools but companions, the only other sentient beings for miles. Stories from pastoral cultures often reflect this bond, portraying dogs as wise, loyal, almost human in their comprehension and dedication. In the Pyrenees, in the Scottish Highlands, on the steppes of Central Asia, shepherds depended on their dogs not just for practical help but for company, for a presence that made the loneliness bearable. Guard dogs served a different but equally vital function. Throughout history, humans have needed to protect their homes, their stored food, their livestock from thieves and predators. Dogs, with their keen hearing and territorial instincts, provided early warning of approaching threats. A dog's bark in the night could mean the difference between safety and disaster. Larger breeds, developed specifically for guarding, added physical deterrence. Few intruders, human or animal, would willingly face a dog bred to defend its territory with courage and aggression. The presence of such dogs allowed communities to sleep more soundly, to store resources with greater confidence, to live with reduced fear. In more recent centuries, as human societies industrialized and urbanized, new roles emerged. Dogs began working in police and military capacities, using their scent detection abilities to find explosives, drugs, and missing persons. They served in wars, carrying messages, detecting mines, providing comfort to soldiers far from home. Some of these dogs became famous, their stories told and retold as examples of bravery and loyalty. Stubby, a dog who served in World War I, detected gas attacks and located wounded soldiers, earning recognition and medals typically reserved for human combatants. His story is one among many, each illustrating the breadth of what dogs can do when asked to serve. The advent of service dogs for people with disabilities represents another evolution. Guide dogs for the blind have existed for nearly a century, trained to navigate complex environments and keep their handlers safe. More recently, dogs have been trained to assist people with mobility impairments, psychiatric conditions, autism, and chronic illnesses. These dogs perform tasks as varied as opening doors, retrieving dropped objects, providing balance support, and interrupting panic attacks or self-harming behaviors. The training is intensive, often taking years, but the impact on the lives of the people they assist is profound. A service dog can mean the difference between independence and isolation, between participation in society and withdrawal from it. Therapy dogs operate on a different principle. They do not perform specific tasks for a single person, but rather provide comfort and emotional support to many. Hospitals, nursing homes, schools, and disaster sites all make use of therapy dogs, recognizing that the simple presence of a calm, friendly dog can reduce stress, lower blood pressure, and improve mood. Children learning to read often do so more confidently when reading aloud to a non-judgmental dog. Patients recovering from surgery report less pain and faster healing when therapy dogs visit. The mechanisms are not fully understood, but the effects are measurable and real. Dogs, it seems, carry with them a kind of healing, a reminder of connection and gentleness in environments that can feel clinical or frightening. Yet for all these specialized roles, the most common role dogs play in the modern world is simply that of companion. In wealthy, industrialized nations, most dogs do not work in the traditional sense. They do not hunt or herd or guard. They live in homes, sleep on furniture, accompany their humans on walks and errands. This shift has occurred rapidly, mostly within the last century, and it represents a transformation in how we relate to dogs. They have become family members, their value measured not in utility but in affection, in the intangible benefits of companionship and emotional support. This change has not diminished the bond. If anything, it has intensified it. When a dog's sole purpose is to be with you, to share your life and your space, the relationship becomes more intimate. You notice the small things, the way the dog sighs when settling down, the way it watches you move through the room, the way it responds to your emotional state with uncanny accuracy. You come to depend on that presence, to structure your days around it. Walking the dog becomes a ritual, a time of movement and fresh air that benefits both of you. The dog's needs, modest as they are, give shape to your routine, providing a sense of purpose and responsibility that can be grounding, especially in times of stress or loneliness. In an increasingly fragmented and digital world, the presence of a dog offers something rare. A living being that is fully present, that does not multitask or check notifications, that simply is. This quality of presence, of being in the moment, is something humans often struggle to achieve. Dogs, however, live in a perpetual now, and in their company, we are drawn into that present too. We are reminded that life happens in small, tangible moments, in the scratch behind the ears, the walk around the block, the quiet companionship of another heartbeat nearby. As night deepens and the world outside grows still, the roles dogs play seem less important than the simple fact of their presence. Hunter or companion, herder or helper, the distinction fades. What remains is the bond, the quiet understanding, the knowledge that you are not alone. The dog at your side asks for nothing more than to be there, and in that simplicity lies a profound gift. Part 7. The Shape of Change. Evolution is often imagined as a slow process, something that unfolds across millions of years, visible only in fossils and deep time. But the domestication of dogs reminds us that evolution can also be rapid, dramatic, observable within the span of recorded history. The transformation from wolf to dog represents one of the most striking examples of evolutionary change driven by human influence. In 15,000 years, give or take a few millennia, an entire species was reshaped, not just in behavior but in body, brain, and even temperament. The changes are so profound that a modern dog and a modern wolf, though genetically similar, are in many ways entirely different creatures. The physical changes are the most obvious. Wolves are built for survival in the wild, their bodies honed by natural selection for hunting, traveling long distances, and enduring harsh conditions. They are large, powerful, with strong jaws and sharp teeth. Their coats are typically gray or brown, providing camouflage. Their ears stand upright, alert. Their tails hang straight or curve slightly. In contrast, dogs display an astonishing variety of forms. Some are tiny enough to fit in a handbag, others larger than wolves. Some have short legs and long bodies, others are tall and lean. Coats come in every color and pattern imaginable, from solid black to spotted to brindle. Ears may be floppy, pointed, or folded. Tails may curl, wag, or tuck. No other mammal exhibits such diversity of appearance within a single species. This variation is not random. It is the result of selection, both natural and artificial. In the early stages of domestication, natural selection favored traits that helped protodogs survive near human settlements. Reduced fear of humans, increased sociability, a willingness to eat a wider variety of foods, these were advantageous. But as humans began to breed dogs intentionally for specific purposes, artificial selection took over. Dogs bred for hunting needed certain traits, dogs bred for herding needed others. Over generations, these targeted breeding efforts amplified particular characteristics, creating the specialized breeds we recognize today. Interestingly, many of the physical changes seen in dogs are linked to a phenomenon called domestication syndrome. When animals are selected for tameness, for reduced aggression and increased docility, other traits often change as well, even if those traits were not directly selected for. Domesticated animals across species tend to develop floppy ears, shorter snouts, curled tails, changes in coat color, and retention of juvenile features into adulthood. The pattern appears in dogs, pigs, horses, cattle, even foxes in experimental domestication programs. The explanation likely involves changes in neural crest cells during development, cells that influence both behavior and physical form. Selecting for tameness inadvertently selects for a suite of related changes, bundled together by the underlying biology. The brain itself has changed. Dog brains are smaller than wolf brains relative to body size, a reduction of about 20 to 30%. This might seem like a disadvantage, but it reflects a trade-off. Dogs do not need the same cognitive abilities required to survive in the wild, to hunt cooperatively, to navigate complex social hierarchies within a pack. Instead, they have developed cognitive abilities specialized for living with humans. Their brains are particularly good at reading social cues, at learning through observation, at forming attachments. They have, in a sense, outsourced some of the cognitive load to us. They do not need to figure out everything on their own because they have humans to rely on. Behavioral changes extend beyond intelligence and social cognition. Dogs have altered stress responses compared to wolves. They are generally more tolerant of novelty, less reactive to sudden changes in their environment. This makes sense given that human environments are constantly shifting, full of strange sights and sounds and smells. A wolf transported to a modern city would likely be overwhelmed, stressed to the point of dysfunction. A dog navigates the same environment with relative ease, taking in stride the noise of traffic, the crowds of people, the myriad stimuli that define urban life. The reproductive cycle of dogs has also changed. Wolves typically breed once a year, time to ensure that pups are born in spring when food is abundant. Dogs, however, can breed twice a year, and their reproductive timing is less rigidly tied to seasons. This shift likely reflects the more stable food supply available near humans. When survival is less precarious, when food is more reliably available, the constraints on reproduction loosen. The result is a species capable of increasing its numbers more rapidly, better able to keep pace with human population growth and demand. Genetics offers a window into these changes at the molecular level. By comparing the genomes of dogs and wolves, researchers have identified specific genes that show strong signatures of selection. Some of these genes are involved in brain development and behavior, unsurprising given the cognitive and temperamental differences between the species. Others are involved in digestion, particularly the ability to process starch. Unlike wolves, dogs produce amylase, an enzyme that breaks down starches, in their saliva and pancreas. This adaptation allowed early dogs to thrive on the scraps and leftovers of human meals, which increasingly included grains and other plant-based foods as humans developed agriculture. The ability to digest starch gave dogs a competitive edge, making them less dependent on meat alone and more compatible with human diets. The story of domestication, then, is not just about selection for friendliness or utility. It is about a cascade of changes, some intentional, others incidental, that together transformed a wild predator into a companion uniquely suited to human life. The process was co-evolutionary. As dogs changed to fit us, we changed our societies and lifestyles in ways that accommodated them. We built shelters that included space for dogs. We adjusted our hunting strategies to incorporate their abilities. We developed emotional and social systems that recognized them as more than mere animals. The relationship shaped both parties, each adapting to the other in an intricate dance that continues to this day. In the modern era, selective breeding has accelerated and intensified, sometimes with troubling consequences. The push for extreme physical traits in certain breeds has led to health problems. Dogs with very short snouts struggle to breathe. Dogs with elongated backs suffer spinal issues. Dogs bred for massive size often have shortened lifespans and joint problems. These are the costs of aesthetic preferences taken too far, of breeding for appearance without sufficient regard for welfare. The recognition of these issues has led to growing calls for more responsible breeding practices, for prioritizing health and temperament over conformity to arbitrary standards. It is a reminder that the power to shape another species carries with it a responsibility to do so wisely and compassionately. As we consider the shape of change, the ways in which dogs have been molded by their association with us, we are also invited to consider our own changes. We have become a species that lives alongside dogs, that structures parts of our lives around their needs and rhythms. We have developed laws, industries, customs, and emotional capacities centered on this relationship. In changing dogs, we have, in subtle but real ways, changed ourselves. The evolution is mutual, ongoing, a process without a clear endpoint. The wolf that approached the fire became a dog. The human that welcomed it became something slightly different too, someone capable of recognizing kinship across the boundary of species. The night is quiet. The form of the dog beside you is familiar, comforting, the result of millennia of transformation. And in that form, in the soft breathing and the warmth, lies a history written in genes and bones, in choices made and paths taken, in the slow, patient work of evolution guided by connection. Part 8. In sickness and in health. The presence of a dog in a household changes more than routines and responsibilities. It changes the health of the people who live there, in ways both subtle and profound. The evidence for this has accumulated steadily over recent decades, as researchers have turned their attention to the physiological and psychological effects of living with companion animals. What they have found consistently is that dogs are good for us, measurably so, in a variety of domains that matter for well-being and longevity. The cardiovascular benefits are among the most well-documented. Multiple studies have shown that dog owners have lower blood pressure and lower cholesterol levels than non-owners, even after controlling for other factors like diet and exercise. The effect is not trivial. One large study found that dog ownership was associated with a 24% reduction in the risk of death from any cause, with an even larger reduction in cardiovascular mortality specifically. The mechanisms are likely multiple. Dogs encourage physical activity through the necessity of daily walks. They provide social support, reducing feelings of loneliness and isolation. They offer stress relief through companionship and the calming effects of touch and presence. The act of petting a dog has been shown to lower cortisol, the body's primary stress hormone, while simultaneously raising levels of oxytocin, serotonin, and dopamine, neurotransmitters associated with bonding, mood regulation, and pleasure. These changes are not merely subjective feelings of relaxation. They are biological shifts that can be measured in blood samples and brain scans. When you stroke a dog's fur, when you feel the warmth and the steady heartbeat, your body responds in ways that promote health and reduce the wear and tear of chronic stress. Children who grow up with dogs may gain immune benefits as well. The hygiene hypothesis suggests that early exposure to microbes and allergens helps train the developing immune system, reducing the risk of allergies and asthma later in life. Dogs bring dirt, dander, and a variety of microorganisms into the home, creating a more diverse microbial environment. Studies have found that children raised with dogs have lower rates of allergies and respiratory infections compared to children raised without pets. The effect is strongest when the exposure occurs in infancy, during the critical period when the immune system is learning to distinguish between harmless and harmful substances. Mental health benefits are equally significant. Dogs provide companionship that can alleviate loneliness, a condition increasingly recognized as a serious health risk comparable to smoking or obesity. For people living alone, particularly the elderly, a dog can be the difference between isolation and connection. The dog offers a reason to get up in the morning, a being that depends on you and greets you with unconditional enthusiasm. This sense of being needed, of having a purpose, is protective against depression and cognitive decline. Veterans with post-traumatic stress disorder have found relief through the presence of service dogs trained to assist with the specific symptoms of trauma. These dogs can interrupt nightmares, provide grounding during flashbacks, create a sense of safety in public spaces by maintaining physical proximity and scanning the environment. The dogs do not cure the condition, but they make daily life more manageable, reducing the frequency and intensity of symptoms enough that many veterans report being able to re-engage with activities and relationships they had withdrawn from. Therapy dogs, as mentioned earlier, work in hospitals, schools, and rehabilitation centers, providing comfort and motivation. Patients in pain report feeling better after a therapy dog visit, often reducing their need for pain medication. Students experiencing test anxiety show lower physiological markers of stress when a dog is present in the testing room. Stroke patients in rehabilitation work harder and recover more function when therapy sessions include interactions with dogs. The presence of a calm, friendly dog seems to act as a social lubricant, making difficult or uncomfortable situations more tolerable, creating an atmosphere of warmth that facilitates healing and learning. Yet the health benefits are not entirely one-directional. Dogs also depend on us for their well-being, and the responsibility of caring for a dog can itself be a source of stress, particularly when illness or injury occurs. Veterinary care has advanced enormously in recent decades, with treatments and technologies that rival those available in human medicine. Dogs can receive chemotherapy for cancer, surgery for orthopedic injuries, dialysis for kidney failure. The level of care available reflects the status dogs have attained in many societies, but it also raises questions about cost, ethics, and how far we should go in prolonging a dog's life when quality of life may be compromised. The decision to euthanize a suffering dog is one of the most difficult choices a person can face. Unlike human medicine, where euthanasia remains legally and ethically complex in most places, veterinary medicine offers the option to end suffering when treatment is no longer viable or humane. Many dog owners describe this as both a mercy and a burden, the final act of love they can offer their companion. The grief that follows is real and deep. Pet loss support groups and counseling services have emerged in recognition of this, providing spaces where people can mourn without judgment, where the depth of their sorrow is understood and validated. The intensity of grief reflects the intensity of the bond. A dog is not merely a possession that can be replaced. It is an individual with its own personality, its own quirks and preferences, its own history intertwined with yours. When that individual dies, a unique relationship ends. The routines built around the dog, the walks at certain times, the rituals of feeding and play, all these suddenly have no object. The house feels emptier. The silence is heavier. For many people, the grief is compounded by a sense that others do not understand, that they are expected to move on quickly because it was, after all, just a dog. But those who have experienced the loss know better. It was not just a dog. It was a presence, a companion, a source of comfort and joy that cannot be easily quantified or dismissed. Some people choose to honor their dogs after death with ceremonies, burials, or cremations. Pet cemeteries exist in many countries, spaces dedicated to memorializing animals who mattered. Photographs, urns, memorial plaques, these are tangible ways of acknowledging the significance of the relationship and the reality of the loss. In some cultures, such expressions of grief are understood and supported. In others, they may be met with incomprehension or ridicule. The disparity reflects broader differences in how animals are perceived and valued. The recognition of dogs as sentient beings deserving of moral consideration has grown significantly, but it is far from universal. In places where dogs are still viewed as commodities, consumed as food or used in ways that cause suffering, the disconnect is stark. The annual dog meat festivals held in parts of China, notably in Yulin, have drawn international condemnation and protest. Activists have worked to rescue dogs destined for slaughter, to change laws, and to shift cultural attitudes. Progress has been uneven. Some regions have banned the consumption of dog meat, recognizing the ethical concerns and the public health risks associated with the trade. Others have resisted change, defending the practice as part of cultural tradition. Similar patterns exist in Vietnam, Indonesia, and the Philippines, where dog meat consumption persists despite growing domestic and international pressure to end it. The arguments in favor of prohibition rest on multiple grounds. Animal welfare, given the often brutal conditions under which dogs are kept and killed. Public health, given the risks of disease transmission. And moral consistency, given that dogs have proven themselves over millennia to be loyal companions rather than livestock. The counter-arguments typically invoke cultural relativism or tradition, But these justifications ring hollow when weighed against the suffering inflicted and the betrayal of a species that has given so much to humanity. The contrast between cultures that mourn their dogs and cultures that consume them highlights the variability in human moral frameworks. But it also suggests a direction of travel. As societies become wealthier and more educated, as people learn more about animal cognition and emotion, the trend has been toward greater protection and higher status for dogs. Laws evolve. Attitudes shift. What was once acceptable becomes unthinkable. The process is slow and uneven, but the arc, at least in much of the world, bends toward recognition of the bond and the obligations it entails. As you sit in the stillness, perhaps with a dog resting nearby, you might reflect on the health you have gained from that presence, the ways in which your life has been enriched and extended by companionship. You might also reflect on the responsibility you carry to ensure that the dog's needs are met, that its life is good, that when the time comes, its suffering is eased with compassion. The relationship is a covenant, unspoken but deeply felt, a mutual commitment that spans the years you share. The night deepens. The breathing of the dog is steady, a rhythm that matches and calms your own. In sickness and in health, in joy and in sorrow, the bond persists, asking only that we honor it as fully as the dog honors us. Part 9. The Modern Bargain. The world dogs inhabit now is vastly different from the one their ancestors knew. The Ice Age landscapes of open tundra and sparse forests have given way to cities of concrete and glass, to suburbs with manicured lawns, to apartments high above the ground. The rhythm of life has changed too. Where once the day was governed by the movements of prey and the cycles of seasons, now it is measured in work schedules and traffic patterns, in the opening hours of dog parks and the availability of veterinary appointments. Dogs have adapted to this new world with their characteristic flexibility, but the adaptation has not been without cost or complication. In urban environments, dogs face challenges their ancestors never encountered. The sheer density of stimuli can be overwhelming. Sirens wail. Cars roar past. Strangers appear and disappear in constant succession. Other dogs, leashed and controlled, pass within feet but cannot engage in the natural social behaviors that wild canids use to establish hierarchy and communicate intent. The result is often stress, manifested in barking, pulling on the leash, or reactivity toward other dogs and people. Training helps, and many urban dog owners invest considerable time and money in classes designed to help their dogs navigate the complexities of city life. But the fundamental mismatch remains. Dogs are adapted for movement and exploration, for following scents across varied terrain, for social interactions that unfold naturally rather than being mediated by leashes and human schedules. The modern bargain, the trade dogs have made in exchange for food and shelter and companionship, involves a significant curtailment of freedom. Most dogs no longer roam. They do not choose where to go or when. They wait for walks, for the human to decide it is time. They eat what is provided, sleep where permitted, interact with whom the human allows. For many dogs, particularly those whose owners are attentive and committed, the trade is probably worth it. The benefits of reliable food, veterinary care, warmth, and affection outweigh the loss of autonomy. But for dogs whose owners are neglectful, whose lives consist of long hours alone in small spaces with minimal stimulation, the bargain is less favorable. These dogs suffer, not from physical deprivation necessarily, but from boredom, loneliness, and the frustration of unmet behavioral needs. Behavioral problems in dogs are often symptoms of this mismatch. Destructive chewing, excessive barking, aggression, anxiety. These are not character flaws. They are expressions of distress, signs that something in the dog's environment or routine is not meeting its needs. A dog left alone for 10 hours while its owner works may chew furniture not out of spite but out of anxiety and boredom. A dog that barks incessantly at passers-by may be expressing territorial behavior that, in a different context, would be adaptive and appropriate. Understanding these behaviors requires seeing the situation from the dog's perspective, recognizing that many of the challenges dogs face are problems we have created through the way we structure their lives. The rise of professional dog training and behavior modification reflects a growing awareness of these issues. Positive reinforcement methods, which reward desired behaviors rather than punishing unwanted ones, have become the standard approach among reputable trainers. The shift represents an ethical evolution, a recognition that dogs learn best and thrive most when treated with patience and respect rather than dominance and coercion. Old training philosophies, based on outdated ideas about pack hierarchy and alpha status, have been largely discredited by scientific research. Dogs are not wolves. They do not view humans as pack members in need of domination. They are domestic animals whose social structure and learning processes are shaped by thousands of years of evolution alongside us. The quality of a dog's life in the modern world depends heavily on the choices and resources of its owner. Wealthy dog owners can provide expansive homes, fenced yards, professional training, high-quality food, and comprehensive veterinary care. Their dogs may visit groomers, attend daycare, travel on vacations. For these dogs, the modern world offers comfort and stimulation that approaches, and perhaps exceeds, anything their ancestors experienced. But not all dogs are so fortunate. In poorer communities, dogs may lack basic veterinary care, may be chained outside for much of their lives, may be seen more as guards or status symbols than as companions deserving of investment and attention. The disparity raises questions about access and equity. If dogs are to be recognized as sentient beings with needs and rights, then those needs must be met regardless of the owner's economic status. Some jurisdictions have begun to address this through subsidized veterinary care, low-cost spay and neuter programs, and laws that set minimum standards for animal housing and care. But enforcement is uneven, and resources are limited. The result is a patchwork, with some dogs living lives of comfort and others enduring conditions that fall far short of what their devotion deserves. Shelters and rescue organizations work to address the consequences of this disparity, taking in dogs who have been abandoned, abused, or surrendered. The number of dogs entering shelters each year is staggering, in the millions in the United States alone. Some are adopted into new homes. Others are fostered. Some, tragically, are euthanized when space and resources run out. The existence of these shelters is both a testament to human compassion and a reminder of human failure. We have brought dogs into our world, made them dependent on us, and then, too often, failed to uphold our end of the bargain. Breed-specific legislation represents another challenge in the modern landscape. Some jurisdictions have banned or restricted certain breeds deemed dangerous, typically those associated with aggression or attacks on humans. Pit bulls, Rottweilers, and similar breeds face legal prohibitions in various places, based on the premise that breed determines behavior. The science does not support this premise. Studies have consistently shown that aggression is more strongly correlated with individual temperament, training, and socialization than with breed. Any dog, regardless of breed, can become aggressive if mistreated, poorly socialized, or placed in threatening situations. Conversely, dogs of so-called dangerous breeds are often gentle and loving when raised responsibly. The legislation reflects fear and misunderstanding more than evidence, and it punishes dogs and responsible owners for the actions of a few. Technology has also entered the equation, offering new tools for managing and understanding dogs. GPS collars allow owners to track their dog's movements. Automatic feeders dispense food on schedules. Cameras enable remote monitoring, letting owners check in on their dogs while away. Apps provide training advice, track health metrics, and connect owners to veterinary services. These innovations can improve the quality of care and the bond between human and dog, but they also risk creating a sense of control and surveillance that treats the dog more as a managed asset than as a sentient companion. The question of what dogs need versus what humans want from them runs through all these modern developments. Do dogs need Instagram accounts and designer outfits? Or do they need consistent routines, adequate exercise, and freedom to engage in natural behaviors? Do they need to be constantly visible and accessible to their owners? Or do they need space and autonomy to rest undisturbed? The anthropomorphization of dogs, the tendency to project human desires and emotions onto them, can lead to choices that satisfy the owner but not the dog. A small dog dressed in clothing may look adorable, but if the clothing restricts movement or causes discomfort, the cuteness comes at a cost the dog pays. Yet anthropomorphization is not entirely negative. The emotional bond between humans and dogs depends on our ability to empathize, to imagine what the dog might be feeling, to respond to its needs with care. The challenge is to balance empathy with understanding, to recognize that while dogs share some emotional experiences with us, they are also different, with their own sensory world, their own motivations, their own ways of interpreting and responding to their environment. Treating a dog as family is appropriate and healthy, so long as we remember that the dog is a particular kind of family member, one whose needs may not always align with our own. As the modern world continues to change, as cities grow denser and work demands increase, the question of how to provide dogs with good lives becomes more pressing. Some argue for systemic changes, for urban planning that includes more green spaces, for work policies that accommodate pet care, for cultural shifts that prioritize animal welfare. Others focus on individual responsibility, on educating current and prospective dog owners about what it truly means to care for a dog. Both approaches have merit. The solution likely requires both systemic change and individual commitment, a recognition that the ancient bond between human and dog must be actively maintained and protected in a world that can easily neglect it. The dog sleeping nearby trusts that its needs will be met, that the bargain will hold. That trust is a gift, one earned over millennia but renewed each day in small acts of care and presence. The modern world may be complicated, full of challenges and compromises, but the core of the relationship remains simple. We are responsible for the beings we have brought into our lives, for the descendants of those wolves who approached the fire so long ago. The responsibility is not a burden but a privilege, an opportunity to honor the bond and to ensure that it endures not just in history but in the lived experience of each individual dog who shares our world. The city hums outside, alive with motion and light. Inside, the space is quiet, shared. The bargain holds, for now, asking only that we remain worthy of the trust placed in us. Part 10. Stories we tell. Every culture that has lived alongside dogs has told stories about them. These stories take many forms: myths and legends, folk tales and fables, historical accounts and personal memories. They appear in ancient texts and oral traditions, in literature and film, in the anecdotes people share about their own dogs. The stories matter because they reveal how we see dogs, what we value in them, and what the relationship means to us. They are mirrors reflecting not just canine nature but human nature as well. In many mythologies, dogs serve as guides between worlds. They appear at thresholds, boundaries between life and death, the known and the unknown. In ancient Greek mythology, Cerberus guards the entrance to the underworld, a three-headed dog preventing the dead from leaving and the living from entering uninvited. The image is fierce, but it is also one of loyalty and duty. Cerberus does not abandon his post. He performs his function with unwavering dedication. In ancient Egyptian belief, Anubis, the jackal-headed god, oversees mummification and guides souls through the afterlife. His presence assures that the transition from life to death will be managed with care and proper ritual. Dogs, in these stories, are not merely animals but beings with sacred responsibilities. Similar themes appear in other traditions. In Norse mythology, dogs guard the gates of hell, the realm of the dead. In Aztec belief, a dog accompanies the deceased on the journey through the underworld, helping the soul cross a great river. The recurrence of these motifs across cultures suggests something deeper than coincidence. Dogs, it seems, occupy a symbolic space associated with transition, protection, and guidance. They are companions not just in life but in the passages beyond, trusted to lead us through uncertainty. Folktales often emphasize loyalty and fidelity. The story of Argos, from Homer's Odyssey, is one of the oldest and most poignant. Odysseus returns home after 20 years of war and wandering, disguised so that no one recognizes him. But Argos, his old hunting dog, knows him immediately. The dog, now aged and neglected, lying on a pile of refuse, summons the strength to wag his tail and prick his ears in recognition. Odysseus, unable to acknowledge the dog without breaking his disguise, walks past. Argos dies moments later, having held on just long enough to see his master return. The scene is brief, but it has resonated through centuries, a testament to the depth and constancy of canine devotion. Japanese culture gave the world Hachiko, the Akita who waited every day at Shibuya Station for his deceased owner. The story became so famous that a statue was erected in Hachiko's honor, and the dog is now a symbol of loyalty throughout Japan and beyond. Similar stories exist in other cultures. Greyfriars Bobby, a Skye Terrier in Scotland, reportedly guarded his owner's grave for 14 years. These accounts, whether entirely factual or embellished, capture something true about how dogs behave and how we respond to that behavior. The loyalty is real, and it moves us in ways that transcend the mundane details of daily life. Literature has explored the human-dog bond from countless angles. Jack London's Call of the Wild and White Fang examine the tension between domestication and wildness, showing dogs as creatures caught between two worlds, capable of both savage survival and deep attachment to humans. John Steinbeck's Travels with Charlie chronicles a journey across America with a standard poodle as companion, using the dog as both a lens through which to view the country and a source of comfort and continuity. Marley and Me, a more recent memoir, captures the chaos and joy of living with an exuberant, unruly Labrador, ultimately confronting the sorrow of loss with unflinching honesty. Each of these works, and countless others, uses the dog as a way to explore larger themes: love and loss, loyalty and freedom, the passage of time and the inevitability of grief. Film and television have brought dog stories to even wider audiences. Lassie became an icon of faithfulness and intelligence, a collie whose adventures captivated generations of viewers. More recently, films like Hachi, A Dog's Tale and A Dog's Purpose have drawn audiences into emotional narratives centered on the bond between humans and dogs. These stories often follow predictable arcs, involving separation, reunion, and death, but they work because they tap into genuine emotions. People cry in theaters watching dogs face danger or die, not because the plots are sophisticated, but because the emotions are real, grounded in the actual experiences of loving and losing a dog. The stories we tell about dogs also reflect our anxieties and values. In some narratives, dogs are heroes, saving children from danger, alerting families to fires, finding lost hikers. These stories celebrate courage and competence, projecting onto dogs the qualities we admire. In other narratives, dogs are victims, suffering abuse or neglect, rescued by compassionate humans. These stories serve as moral parables, reminding us of our responsibility and the consequences of failure to uphold it. In still other narratives, dogs are teachers, their simpler, more authentic way of being, offering lessons about living in the present, loving unconditionally, finding joy in small things. These stories reflect a longing for the qualities dogs seem to embody, a wish to be more like them in certain respects. Personal stories, the ones people tell about their own dogs, are often the most powerful. These are not polished narratives crafted for mass consumption, but raw, intimate accounts of shared life. The dog who sensed an oncoming seizure and alerted help. The dog who refused to leave the side of a child with autism, providing comfort no human could. The dog who, in its final days, seemed to understand what was happening and offered forgiveness and affection to the humans struggling with the decision to let it go. These stories circulate in conversations, in online forums, in grief support groups. They validate the experiences of those who have felt the depth of the bond, confirming that what they felt was not silly or excessive but real and justified. The cultural variability in dog stories is worth noting. In Western cultures, dogs are predominantly portrayed as companions and heroes. In other traditions, the symbolism can be more complex. In some Islamic interpretations, dogs are considered ritually unclean, though working dogs and guard dogs are valued. In Hindu tradition, dogs appear in both positive and negative contexts, sometimes as loyal companions, other times as symbols of death or pollution. These variations remind us that the human-dog relationship, while ancient and widespread, is not monolithic. It is shaped by cultural, religious, and economic factors that influence how dogs are perceived and treated. Yet across all these differences, certain themes recur. Loyalty appears again and again, in myth and memoir, in ancient epic and modern film. Protection, guidance, companionship, these are the constants. The stories we tell about dogs, regardless of culture or era, tend to emphasize the qualities that define the relationship, the reasons we brought them into our lives in the first place, and the reasons we keep them there. As you think about the dog in your own life, or the dogs you have known, you might find your own story forming. The small moments that accumulate into meaning. The walks in early morning light. The way the dog looked at you when you were sad, offering wordless comfort. The games played, the routines established, the silent understandings reached. These are the stories that matter most, not because they are dramatic or unusual, but because they are yours, woven into the fabric of your life in ways that cannot be easily separated. The night holds space for these stories. They do not need to be spoken aloud to exist. They live in memory, in feeling, in the quiet recognition that you have shared something significant with another being. The dog beside you, or the memory of dogs past, is part of your story. And you are part of theirs, the human who appeared in their life, who provided and cared, who was, in the end, their whole world. The stories continue, told and retold, changing with each generation but always returning to the same essential truth. We are not alone. We have never been alone. Since the Ice Age, since the first tentative approach, since the moment the fire was shared, we have had dogs. And they, for better or worse, have had us. Part 11. The Ethics of Kinship. To live with a dog is to enter into a relationship of profound asymmetry. The dog depends on you for nearly everything: food, shelter, medical care, freedom of movement, social interaction. You hold power over its life in ways both obvious and subtle. You decide when it eats, where it sleeps, whether it will have the opportunity to breed, how long it will live, and how its life will end. This imbalance raises ethical questions that deserve careful consideration. Questions about what we owe to beings who have given us so much and who have no choice but to trust us with their welfare. The first question concerns autonomy. Dogs, unlike their wolf ancestors, have been bred for dependence. They cannot easily survive without human support, at least not in the environments most of them inhabit. Feral dog populations exist in some parts of the world, scraping by on garbage and whatever they can scavenge, but these lives are typically short and harsh. Most dogs need us. This dependency is something we created deliberately, through thousands of generations of selection. We shaped them to be companions, to need us, to look to us for guidance and care. Having created this dependency, we bear responsibility for its consequences. That responsibility begins with meeting basic needs: food and water, shelter from weather, protection from harm. But it extends further. Dogs also have psychological and social needs. They require mental stimulation, opportunities to engage in natural behaviors like sniffing and exploring, social contact with humans and sometimes with other dogs. A life confined to a small space with minimal interaction, even if physical needs are met, is a life of deprivation. The ethics of dog ownership demand more than keeping a dog alive. They demand attention to quality of life, to ensuring that the dog's experience is not merely one of survival but of well-being. The question of breeding carries particular ethical weight. The demand for purebred dogs with specific appearances has led to practices that prioritize aesthetics over health. Some breeds suffer from genetic conditions that cause chronic pain or disability. Bulldogs struggle to breathe because their skulls have been bred too flat. German Shepherds develop hip dysplasia at alarming rates. Cavalier King Charles Spaniels are prone to a neurological condition in which their brains are too large for their skulls. These problems are not natural. They are the direct result of human choices, of breeding programs that valued certain looks over the welfare of the animals being produced. Responsible breeders exist, individuals who prioritize health testing, genetic diversity, and temperament over show ring success. They breed carefully, selectively, with the goal of producing healthy dogs capable of living comfortable lives. But they are outnumbered by those who breed for profit, by puppy mills that keep dogs in squalid conditions and produce litter after litter without regard for health or welfare. The market for dogs, like many markets, responds to demand without inherent ethical constraints. Buyers who insist on particular breeds or specific physical traits inadvertently support systems that cause suffering. The ethical path involves educating oneself, supporting responsible breeders or rescue organizations, and resisting the impulse to treat dogs as fashion accessories or status symbols. Adoption from shelters and rescues offers an alternative that addresses some of these concerns. Millions of dogs wait in shelters, many of them healthy and well-adjusted, simply in need of homes. By adopting rather than purchasing from breeders, people reduce demand for breeding and provide homes for dogs who might otherwise be euthanized. The choice is not always straightforward. Some people have legitimate reasons for wanting specific breeds, based on size constraints, allergies, or particular behavioral traits needed for work or assistance roles. But for many, adoption is both ethical and practical, offering the chance to provide a home to a dog in need while avoiding complicity in problematic breeding practices. Spaying and neutering represent another ethical dimension. The procedures prevent unwanted litters, reducing the number of dogs born into a world where homes are scarce. They also provide health benefits, reducing the risk of certain cancers and infections. But they also remove the dog's ability to reproduce, a fundamental biological capacity. The decision is typically framed as obviously correct, and in most cases it probably is, given the overpopulation crisis. Yet it is worth acknowledging that we are making a choice on behalf of the dog, a choice that serves broader social goods but involves a permanent alteration to the dog's body. The ethics are clearest when we recognize the trade-offs honestly rather than pretending there are none. End-of-life decisions pose perhaps the most difficult ethical questions. When a dog is suffering, when quality of life has deteriorated beyond recovery, euthanasia is often the kindest option. Veterinary medicine offers this mercy, the ability to end suffering peacefully and painlessly. But the decision to euthanize is never easy. It requires judgment about the dog's experience, about whether the bad days outweigh the good, about whether further treatment offers real hope or merely prolongs suffering. Some owners struggle with guilt, wondering if they acted too soon or waited too long. There is no perfect answer, only the attempt to act in the dog's best interest, to prioritize its well-being over our own desire to keep it with us. The question of what dogs owe us, if anything, is less often asked but worth considering. We speak of dogs as loyal, devoted, grateful. But these are human interpretations of canine behavior. Dogs do not experience obligation in the way humans do. They do not stay with us out of duty or moral principle. They stay because evolution has shaped them to bond with us, because their neurobiology rewards proximity to humans, because in most cases we are the source of everything they need and value. To frame the relationship in terms of debt or obligation is to misunderstand its nature. Dogs give what they give not because they owe it, but because they are constituted to give it. The generosity is built in, a product of the domestication process. This realization, far from diminishing the relationship, enriches it. We are not owed loyalty or affection. These things are offered freely, or as freely as biology allows. Our ethical responsibility arises not because dogs owe us something, but because we have made them what they are. We have shaped them to need us, to bond with us, to find their fulfillment in relationship with us. Having done so, we are obligated to ensure that the relationship is one in which they can thrive. Cultural practices that involve eating dogs stand in stark violation of this ethical framework. In regions where dog meat consumption persists, dogs are often raised in conditions of extreme cruelty, kept in cramped cages, transported without food or water, and slaughtered using methods that cause terror and pain. Some of these dogs are stolen pets, wearing collars, clearly someone's companion. The festivals that celebrate this consumption, such as the Yulin Dog Meat Festival in China, represent a profound moral failure, a refusal to recognize what dogs are and what they deserve. Defenders of the practice sometimes invoke cultural relativism, arguing that food choices are culturally determined and outsiders have no right to judge. But this argument collapses under scrutiny. Culture does not justify cruelty. Tradition does not justify betraying a species that has served humanity faithfully for 15,000 years. The movement to end dog meat consumption has gained ground in recent years. Activists have rescued thousands of dogs from slaughterhouses and transport trucks. Governments in South Korea, Taiwan, and elsewhere have enacted bans or restrictions. Public opinion, even within countries where the practice is traditional, has shifted significantly, with younger generations increasingly rejecting it as incompatible with modern values and awareness of animal sentience. The progress is encouraging, but much work remains. Millions of dogs are still killed for meat annually, and in many places the laws that exist are poorly enforced. The ethics of kinship, ultimately, demand that we see dogs clearly, not as tools or commodities, but as beings with their own experiences, their own capacity for suffering and joy. They are not human, and we should not pretend they are. But they are not mere things either. They occupy a space that human language struggles to define, somewhere between the human and the animal, shaped by us but not reducible to our purposes. The relationship is ancient, reciprocal, and deeply significant. To honor it requires more than affection. It requires thought, care, and a willingness to act in ways that prioritize the dog's welfare even when doing so is difficult or costly. The dog trusts you completely. That trust is a fact, not a sentiment. It shapes how the dog moves through the world, what risks it will take, what discomforts it will endure. The ethical question is simple, though the answer is often complex. Are you worthy of that trust? Are you doing what needs to be done to ensure the dog's life is good? The questions are not meant to induce guilt but to invite reflection, to remind us that the bond, however ancient and natural it feels, is also a responsibility, one that each generation must choose to uphold. The night is late now. The world has narrowed to this room, this moment, this quiet presence. The dog sleeps, trusting, and you, watching, bear witness to the bond and all it asks of you. Part 12. Forward into tomorrow. The future of the relationship between humans and dogs is not predetermined. It will be shaped by choices we make, individually and collectively, in response to changing circumstances and evolving understanding. The bond has endured for 15,000 years, adapting to Ice Age tundra and modern cities, to hunting camps and apartments, to every human culture and climate. Its flexibility is remarkable, but flexibility has limits. The question facing us now is whether we can maintain and honor the relationship in a world that is changing faster than ever before, in ways that challenge the foundations on which the bond was built. Climate change will affect dogs as it affects all life. Rising temperatures make some regions less hospitable for breeds adapted to cold weather. Droughts and resource scarcity may strain the ability of communities to care for companion animals. Natural disasters, increasing in frequency and severity, displace both humans and dogs, creating refugee populations of both species. How we respond to these challenges will reveal much about our commitment to the bond. Will we include dogs in our evacuation plans, our disaster relief efforts, our long-term adaptations? Or will they be seen as expendable, luxuries we can no longer afford when resources are scarce? Urbanization continues to reshape human life, concentrating populations in cities where space is limited and nature is distant. Dogs can adapt to urban environments, as millions already have, but the adaptation requires deliberate effort. Cities must provide green spaces, places where dogs can exercise and explore. Regulations must balance the needs of dog owners with those of other residents, creating frameworks that allow dogs to be part of urban life without causing conflict. Architecture and urban planning can incorporate dog-friendly design, from buildings with pet amenities to neighborhoods structured around walkability and access to parks. These are choices, not inevitabilities. They require recognition that dogs are part of the urban population, deserving of consideration in how we build and manage our cities. Technology offers tools that may enhance the relationship or complicate it. Advances in veterinary medicine continue to extend dogs' lifespans and improve their quality of life. Genetic testing can identify health risks before they manifest, allowing preventive care. Telemedicine brings veterinary advice to remote areas. These are positive developments. But technology also enables surveillance and control in ways that may not serve dogs' interests. Chips implanted for identification can track movements. Algorithms analyze behavior and make recommendations, potentially reducing the dog to a set of data points. The challenge is to use technology thoughtfully, in service of the dog's welfare rather than as an end in itself. The legal status of dogs continues to evolve. More jurisdictions are recognizing dogs as sentient beings rather than property, a shift that has implications for custody disputes, animal cruelty prosecutions, and end-of-life decisions. Some places have enacted laws allowing dogs to be included in domestic violence protection orders, recognizing that abusers often threaten or harm pets to control victims. Other laws mandate that dogs be considered in divorce proceedings, with decisions based on the dog's best interest rather than simply as asset division. These changes reflect growing awareness that dogs are family members, that their welfare matters in its own right, not merely as an extension of human property interests. Education plays a crucial role in shaping the future. Teaching children about responsible dog ownership, about canine behavior and communication, about the needs and capacities of dogs, creates a generation better prepared to uphold the bond. Schools that incorporate humane education into their curricula produce adults more likely to treat animals with respect and empathy. Public awareness campaigns can shift cultural attitudes, challenging practices like puppy mills and breed-specific legislation, promoting adoption and responsible breeding, encouraging people to see dogs as beings deserving of consideration and care. The scientific study of dogs continues to yield insights. Researchers are exploring canine cognition, emotion, and social behavior with ever more sophisticated tools. We are learning how dogs perceive time, how they remember, how they experience emotions like jealousy and empathy. This knowledge enhances our ability to provide for them and deepens our appreciation of their inner lives. It also raises new questions. If dogs experience emotions comparable to human emotions, what does that mean for how we treat them? If they have a sense of fairness, if they can feel betrayed or disappointed, how should that inform our interactions with them? Genetic technologies present both opportunities and ethical dilemmas. Gene editing could potentially eliminate hereditary health problems, creating dogs free from the suffering caused by generations of inbreeding and selection for extreme traits. But the same technologies could be used to create dogs designed to specific human preferences, pushing the boundaries of what dogs are in pursuit of novelty or profit. The line between therapeutic intervention and problematic manipulation is not always clear. Navigating this terrain will require careful ethical deliberation, informed by scientific understanding and guided by a commitment to dogs' welfare rather than human desires alone. The global nature of modern society means that attitudes and practices in one region can influence others. The movement against dog meat consumption, for example, is international, with activists from many countries working together to pressure governments and change cultural norms. Social media amplifies these efforts, spreading images and stories that generate outrage and solidarity. This connectivity can be a force for good, mobilizing concern and action across borders. But it can also lead to cultural insensitivity, with people in wealthy Western nations imposing their values on other cultures without understanding local contexts or listening to voices from those communities. The challenge is to advocate for dogs' welfare in ways that are respectful and effective, that build alliances rather than simply condemning from a distance. The relationship between humans and dogs has always been reciprocal. We have shaped them, but they have shaped us as well. Living with dogs may have influenced human evolution, selecting for social and emotional capacities that made us better able to form bonds across species. Dogs have certainly influenced human history, enabling hunting strategies, protecting settlements, providing companionship that made survival in harsh environments more bearable. Looking forward, the question is not just what we will do for dogs, but what dogs will continue to do for us. In an age of increasing isolation, digital connection replacing physical presence, dogs offer something irreplaceable: embodied companionship, presence that is warm and real, a being whose existence reminds us that we are not alone. Mental health professionals increasingly recognize the therapeutic value of dogs. Animal-assisted therapy is used to treat depression, anxiety, PTSD, and other conditions. The presence of a dog can make difficult conversations easier, provide motivation for people struggling with daily tasks, offer comfort without judgment or expectation. As mental health challenges become more prevalent, as the pace and demands of modern life take psychological tolls, dogs may become even more valuable as sources of stability and support. This is not to romanticize them or place unrealistic burdens on them. It is simply to recognize that the bond, which has endured for so long, continues to meet human needs in ways that are perhaps more important now than ever. Yet we must also ask whether we are meeting dogs' needs in return. The modern world, for all its comforts, is not necessarily well suited to canine well-being. Dogs need space to move, opportunities to engage their senses, social interaction with both humans and other dogs. They need routines that provide structure and predictability. They need to feel safe and valued. Many dogs receive these things. Many do not. The future of the relationship depends on our willingness to prioritize dogs' needs, to make space for them in our lives not as afterthoughts or accessories but as partners, beings whose welfare matters as much as our own. As you rest now, perhaps with a dog nearby or with the memory of dogs you have known, consider what the bond means to you. Consider what it has given you, the companionship and joy, the lessons about loyalty and presence, the comfort of being met with enthusiasm and acceptance regardless of your failures or moods. Consider what you have given in return, the care and attention, the walks and meals, the quiet presence that has shaped the dog's world. The exchange is not equal, cannot be equal, because the power dynamics are too imbalanced. But it can be honorable, can be characterized by respect and commitment, by a recognition that the bond is sacred in its own way, worthy of protection and care. 15,000 years is a long time. Empires have risen and fallen. Languages have emerged and disappeared. Technologies have transformed beyond recognition. But through it all, the bond between human and dog has persisted. It has changed form, adapted to new circumstances, but it has endured. The amber eyes that watched from beyond the firelight all those millennia ago watch still, from beside the bed, from across the room, from the threshold between sleep and waking. The fire burns low, as it always has, as it always will. The dog settles deeper into rest, breath slowing, body relaxing into the trust that you will keep watch, that the bond will hold through the night and into the morning. And you, listening to that breath, feeling that presence, are part of a story that began before memory, before history, in a time when the world was ice and darkness and the first tentative steps toward partnership were taken. The story continues. It is written in every interaction, every moment of care, every choice to honor what dogs have given and to ensure they receive what they need. The future is unwritten, but the past offers guidance. For 15,000 years, we have walked together. The path stretches forward still, into tomorrow and beyond, asking only that we walk it with the same care and commitment that brought us this far. The night deepens into quiet. The dog dreams, perhaps of running, perhaps of you. The bond holds, ancient and new, a thread connecting past to present to future. And in that connection lies something precious, something worth preserving, something that speaks to the best of what we are and what we might become. Rest now. The story is told, for tonight at least. The dog is beside you, as dogs have been beside humans since the beginning. And in that simple presence, in that shared stillness, the 15,000-year journey finds its meaning, its purpose, its peace.